Hello and welcome to Workers Comp Unwrapped, the podcast that simplifies workers' compensation for physicians. I'm your host, Max, here to give you clear, actionable insights to navigate the medical legal side of workers' comp. So let's get started. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 26 of Workers Comp Unwrapped with Max and Aisha, who has 15 years of experience in the industry. Today we are talking about essential documents for workers' comp compliance in California.
That's right. Basically a rundown of all the required paperwork things like employer reports, injury logs, medical documentation.
The stuff you absolutely need to nail to avoid, well, disputes and, frankly, legal nightmares.
It's a big one.
Okay, so let's just dive right in. California workers' comp documentation. It sounds tedious, maybe even terrifying.
It can feel that way. Our sources today really hammer this home, though, in this system, the paperwork. It isn't just admin stuff, it's everything.
Everything. Foundational.
Absolutely. You miss a form, you check the wrong box, maybe submit something a day late. You're not just looking at, like, a small delay.
What then?
You could be basically setting fire to your ability to get paid, or you could be facing some pretty serious penalties. Well, sometimes it feels like the Wild West, you know?
And your documents are your only weapon.
Pretty much. Your weapon and your map through the chaos.
Okay. So, our mission today for this deep dive, cut through all that noise, identify the absolute essential documents you have to get right.
Right, and understand why getting them wrong is so damaging.
And hopefully give you some strategies to make your documentation, bulletproof.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, we think of paperwork as the boring part after the real work happens, right? The injury gets reported, the doctor provides treatment.
Yeah, the stuff that actually matters.
Or so you'd think. But in California workers' comp, the documentation almost is the work as far as the system sees it. The sources kept saying variations of, if it's not documented, it basically never happened.
Ouch.
And maybe even worse, if it's documented wrong, you might as well have not bothered in the first place.
Wow. Okay, brutal but clear. Let's start right there, at the foundation. Why is documentation the non-negotiable core here?
Well, it boils down to the law. This isn't a system based on suggestions or, good intentions. Every single step, every form, every deadline, it's all dictated by the California Labor Code and Title 8 of the California Code of Regulations. That's the rule book.
And ignoring the rule book has consequences.
Oh yeah, expensive ones.
What actually happens if my documents aren't right?
Well, the list is long.
Yeah.
And painful. Payment denials are probably the most common thing, especially if you're a medical provider.
Yeah.
You'll face huge problems in lien disputes. And then there's the DWC audit unit. They're out there. And the sources point out that documentation errors are like flashing red lights for them. They're frequently cited violations in audits tied back to specific rules like Labor Code 129 or CCR 10107.
So real penalties.
Real penalties. And in really bad cases, you could even be looking at legal action.
So it's not just, oops, I missed a form. It actually becomes a tool used against you.
Exactly. It gives the other side, maybe the insurance company, the claims administrator, a completely legal reason to deny a bill or delay the whole claim or fight you on the treatment provided.
Because you didn't follow the rules.
Precisely. They can just say, hey, rules weren't followed, and the system, well, it backs them up. It's a common tactic, honestly. Bad paperwork is like handing them free ammo.
Okay. Stakes are definitely high. So let's get into the specifics. What are these key documents, the absolute must-haves? Maybe break it down by who needs to handle what.
Yeah, good idea. Let's start with employers. There are like 3 big ones right off the bat. First, the employer's first report of injury. That's Form 5020.
Form 5020. Got it.
The law, Labor Code 6409.1, says you must get this to your claims administrator within 5 days of knowing an employee got hurt on the job.
5 days? That's pretty quick.
It is. Miss that. You're already starting off on the wrong foot.
Okay, what's number 2 for employers?
The employee claim form, DWC-1. This one's critical. The employer is legally required Labor Code 54001 to give this form to the injured worker.
Okay, directly to the worker.
Directly. And get this within 1 working day of finding out about the injury.
1 day. Seriously.
1 working day. Failing to do that, Huge compliance issue. It messes up the whole claim process, potentially opens the employer up to penalties. It's a big deal.
Wow. Okay, one day's super tight. What's the third one for employers?
That's the OSHA 300 log. Now, this applies if you're an employer who meets the OSHA requirements for record keeping.
Right, tracking workplace injuries.
Exactly. You have to keep this log of injuries and illnesses, and the sources mention if you mess this up or just don't keep it current, you can get in trouble with both OSHA and the DWC.
Double trouble. Great. Okay, so that's the employer's immediate to-do list?
Yeah.
What about the medical providers, the doctors, the clinics trying to get paid for treatment?
Ah, yes. This is where it gets even more complex, maybe, because their payments are so directly tied to getting the paperwork right.
Makes sense.
So first up for them, the doctor's first report of occupational injury or illness, Form 5021.
5021. Another form.
Another form, another deadline. Just like the employer's report, it's 5 days. But it's 5 days from the initial medical treatment. That's Labor Code 6409.
And why is this one so crucial?
It's foundational. Often, the claims administrator can't even fully accept the claim or really start the payment process without this specific report.
So the 5021 is kind of like the green light for the whole medical payment side of things.
You could say that, yeah. Next, primary treating physician progress reports, usually called PR2s.
PR2s. Okay.
Now, these aren't just, random updates. They're specifically required by the rules CCR 9785 when certain things happen.
Like what?
Like a change in the treatment plan, or if the doctor refers the patient somewhere else, like to a specialist. Or a big one, when the doctor says the patient has reached maximum medical improvement, MMA.
Yeah, MMI.
Right. So if you're the treating doctor providing ongoing care, you need to know when these reports are triggered and get them sent.
Got it. Not just sending reports whenever, but based on specific events in the treatment.
Exactly right. And then there's authorization. Before doing almost any non-emergency treatment, providers usually need to get approval first. That's done with a request for authorization, the RFA. And the sources really stress this. The RFA must be complete and have solid medical justification, meaning all the details, ICD-10 codes, CPT codes for what you want to do, and a clear explanation of why this treatment is medically necessary for this injury. CCR 9792.9.1 lays it out.
And if it's not complete? If it's missing something?
It's basically asking for a denial, an incomplete or unjustified RFA. That's like an easy no for the reviewer.
Wow. So leaving off one code or not explain the why clearly enough can just sink the whole request.
It absolutely can, which naturally leads us to billing documents.
Ah, the bills themselves.
Right. You got to use the standard forms like the CMS 1500. But here's the detail the source has flagged again and again as a major tripwire. You must attach the required supporting reports.
Attach them to the bill.
Yes. The doctor's first report, 5021, the relevant PR2s, maybe the RFA approval letter, whatever's required to support that specific bill. CCR 9792.5.3 is super clear on this.
And if you don't attach them?
If you don't attach those reports, the insurance company has a perfectly legal right to just reject your bill, flat out deny it.
So it doesn't matter if you did the treatment perfectly?
Nope. If the proof isn't attached to the bill when you send it, they can say no. It's not enough to have the reports somewhere. They need to be submitted with the bill.
That feels like such a simple thing to miss, but with huge consequences, like forgetting to put the stamp on the envelope.
Kind of like that. And speaking of payment stuff, you absolutely need to keep the explanation of review, the EOR.
The EOR. That's what the insurer sends back, saying what they paid or didn't pay.
Exactly. It explains their decision on your bill. And the sources say holding on to these is crucial because the date on that EOR, that starts the clock ticking.
Ticking for what?
For your right to file a second bill review, an SBR, if you disagree with how they paid or if they paid.
Ah, so you need the EOR to even start the dispute process.
Precisely. If you lose that EOR, you've probably lost your chance to file an SBR for that bill.
So the EOR isn't just a receipt, it's like the key to the next level of appeal.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. And if the SBR doesn't fix it, the next step might be independent bill review, IBR.
Okay.
And the whole process for filing SBRs and IBRs, governed by more rules like Labor Code 4603.2 and CCR 9792.5.14. And guess what you need to submit for those?
Let me guess. More documentation.
You got it. The original bills, the EORs you hopefully kept, and detailed info explaining why you're disputing the payment.
It never ends.
Almost there for providers. Finally, if you're trying to get reimbursed directly, maybe for services where the bill wasn't paid, there's lien filing. You use DWC Form 1 for that.
Filing a lien.
governed by Labor Code 4903. And again, it's not just filling out the form. You need to attach your detailed billing records, proof you actually provided the services, and the supporting medical reports.
All attached.
All attached. Oh, and don't forget about the activation fees for filing, Liz, unless you happen to be exempt.
Wow, okay, deep breath indeed. That is a mountain of paperwork just for the medical side. Are there documents that kind of apply to everyone involved?
Yeah, two things really stand out from the sources as universal needs. First, proof of service.
Proof of service.
Yeah. Anytime you send something important, doesn't matter if it's an RFA, a bill, a legal notice, a lien filing, you absolutely must have proof that you sent it.
How do you get that?
Could be a fax confirmation sheet, an email delivery receipt, maybe a confirmation from an online portal if you submit it electronically. Something that shows what you sent, when you sent it, and ideally that it was received.
Why is that so important?
Because without proof of service, your submission might as well not exist if there's ever a dispute about whether you sent it or sent it on time. It's like saying, I mailed the rent. But having no postmark or tracking number, it undermines your whole position.
Okay. Proof it actually left your hands and went where it needed to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the second universal thing, correspondence logs.
Keeping track of calls and emails.
Yes. A detailed record of all communication. Phone calls, emails, letters sent or received. Who you talked to, adjuster, attorney, utilization review company, anyone. Dates, times, what you discussed, any agreements or disagreements?
Seems like a lot of work.
It can be. But imagine a dispute months later about whether someone agreed to an extension or whether you notified them about something. Your log becomes your evidence, your timeline. It can save you.
This whole list, it really does sound less like just navigating a system and more like, I don't know, performing intricate surgery with paper and deadlines.
That's not a bad analogy, and getting any part of it wrong, as we've seen, sounds incredibly expensive.
It really does. The financial hit seems like the biggest motivator or punishment.
It often is, especially for providers. Their cash flow depends directly on getting this documentation right and getting paid on time.
All right, let's lean into those painful points for a second. Based on what the sources said, what are the absolute most common, most costly, maybe most soul-crushing documentation mistakes people are making out there?
Yeah, the sources were pretty clear on the repeat offenders. Right at the top, incomplete RFAs. Requests for authorization.
We talked about that missing codes, justification.
Exactly. Leaving off the full ICD-10 code or this specific CPT code for the treatment requested or forgetting the doctor's signature, little things. But if that form isn't 100% complete with the medical rationale spelled out, it's basically dead on arrival. Instant denial.
So one tiny empty box can just kill the whole request for treatment.
Pretty much, yep. Another huge one, and we touched on it earlier, is submitting that doctor's first report, the 4421, late.
Right, the 5-day deadline from first treatment.
Correct. Sending it on day 6, day 10, that directly delays the claims administrator's ability to accept the claim, which means delays in payment starting. It's like shooting yourself in the foot right at the beginning.
Total self-sabotage.
Absolutely. And then the one we discussed about billing, failing to attach all the required reports to your medical bills.
That CCR rule, 9792.5.3.
That's the one. The sources really emphasize this. Insurers can, and often do, use that rule to lawfully reject the entire bill if the supporting docs, the DFR, the relevant PR2, maybe the UR approval aren't physically attached or clearly linked electronically when the bill goes out.
That rule about attaching reports, it seems so simple on the surface, but sounds like it causes massive headaches.
It really does. It's a detail that's easy to overlook until, bam, your bill comes back denied for missing required reports.
What else?
Not keeping your EORs. Your explanation of reviews, we talked about how the EOR starts the clock for the second bill review.
Right. No EOR, no SBR.
Exactly. You literally cannot file an SBR without submitting the EOR. So if you toss it or lose it, you've just shut down your primary way to appeal that payment decision. You lose your rights because you lost the key document.
Man, that's rough. Anything else major?
One more big one, filing lienas without the proper backup, just sending in that DWC Form 1 for the lien, not gonna cut it.
Needs the bills attached.
Needs the detailed bills, proof you actually served those bills previously, and the supporting medical documentation. If you file a lien without all that attached, the sources say the courts will often just dismiss it. You haven't provided the evidence to back up your claim for payment through the lien.
Okay, so the running theme here seems to be meticulous attention to detail, hitting every deadline, and making absolutely sure every claim or request has the required proof physically traveling with it.
That's a perfect summary, yeah.
And it sounds like most people only really learn these lessons the hard way. after they've lost money or gotten slapped with a penalty.
Unfortunately, yeah. Often that's the wake-up call. The financial pain from these errors is usually the most persuasive teacher.
All right, enough doom and gloom. Let's shift gears. How do we avoid all this pain? How do you actually get to what the sources call bulletproof compliance? What are the strategies?
Okay, yeah, let's talk solutions. It's really about being proactive, building systems. First big thing, standard operating procedures, SOPs.
Like actual written down processes.
Exactly. Document exactly how your office handles each required form. Who fills it out? What info must be included? Who double checks it? How is it sent? When does it need to be sent by? Turn it into a repeatable checklist, not just, hoping someone remembers.
Get it out of people's heads and onto paper or screen.
Precisely. Second, embrace digital document management. Seriously, trying to manage all this with physical paper is just a nightmare.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Secure digital systems let you search easily. They often timestamp submissions automatically. Everything's organized. This is absolutely critical if you ever face an audit or need to pull records for a dispute.
Makes sense. Go digital. What else?
Third, get automated submission confirmations for everything you send electronically or even by fax. That digital receipt, that confirmation page printout, the fax transmission report, save it.
That's your proof of service again.
Exactly. It's your proof, your alibi that you sent the document and sent it on time. Don't just hit send and assume it got there. Get the confirmation.
Okay. SOPs, digital systems, confirmations. Number 4.
Conduct regular compliance audits on yourself.
Audit yourself.
Yeah. Don't wait for the DWC or an insurance company auditor to find your mistakes. Periodically, pull a sample of your own files. Review them. Are the RFAs totally complete? Are reports always attached to bills? Are you saving all the EORs?
Catch your own errors before they bite you.
Exponentially better, right.
Yeah.
Catching it internally means you can fix the process. Having it found externally means denials, delays, penalties.
Good point. And finally,
stay updated. This is crucial. The DWC changes forms, updates regulations more often than you might think.
Really?
Oh, yeah. What was the right form or the exact rule last year might be slightly different this year. You have to make it someone's responsibility to periodically check the DWC website for updates. Pleading ignorance, I didn't know the form changed. That just doesn't fly.
Okay, so SOPs, digital records, confirmations, self-audits, and staying current. That sounds like a solid plan. Could probably save a ton of headaches and, yeah, a lot of money.
Definitely. It's an investment in preventing much bigger costs down the line.
The sources also had some specific Q&A points, kind of clarifying some nuances. Let's hit a few of those quickly. What about ongoing treatment, like physical therapy? If a patient needs more sessions after the first approved batch, do I need a whole new RFA?
Generally, yes. The sources clarify that ongoing treatment, like more PT sessions after the initially authorized ones are done, usually requires a new, fully documented RFA. You have to justify the continued medical necessity.
Makes sense. Okay, what if I mess up and, say, lose an EOR? Can I just call the insurer and ask for another copy so I can file my SBR?
Well, you can request a copy, and technically they should provide it. However, the source points out that doing so adds delay.
Because the deadline started from the original EOR date.
Exactly. Waiting for them to send a copy eats into your limited time to file the SBR. It could put your appeal rights at risk. Best practice, keep that original EOR safe when you first get it.
Okay, good tip. What about handwritten doctor's notes? Are those good enough as the formal medical reports needed for billing and justifying treatment?
The sources are pretty firm on this. Generally, no. The system requires legible, formal reports, preferably typed or electronic. Handwritten notes, often illegible, unstructured. They just don't usually meet the standard for claims processing or review.
Stick to formal reports. Got it. Can a provider file a lien against a claim before they've even submitted the bills for the services they want the lien for?
Absolutely not. The sources state very clearly, liens have to be supported by prior documented billing for the services you're claiming weren't paid. A lien is specifically a tool to collect on an unpaid bill. You can't file a lien for something you haven't formally billed for yet.
Okay, that makes sense. And just zooming out one last time, we've talked a lot about avoiding denials and penalties. But how does doing all this documentation work actually proactively prevent payment losses?
It works in a few key ways. First, getting it right, initially complete RFAs, bills with all attachments drastically reduces the chance of getting denied for simple technical reasons right out of the gate.
Avoids the easy no.
Exactly. Second, Keeping those logs and confirmations helps you track all your deadlines and prove you met them, which is vital if timeliness ever becomes an issue in a dispute.
Covers your bases.
Right. And third, having that solid, complete documentation package is your ammunition if a payment is denied or underpaid. It provides the essential evidence you need to successfully fight back through appeals like SBR and IBR. You actually have proof to support your case.
So if all this documentation feels like just annoying extra work, the takeaway is the alternative might be literally working for free.
Or worse, paying penalties on top of not getting paid. So yeah, pretty much.
Okay, wrapping up this deep dive then.
Nope.
The message seems incredibly clear. In California workers' comp, documentation isn't some side task. It's not secondary.
No, it is the engine. It drives the whole claims process, the whole payment process.
And ignoring it or getting it wrong isn't just a small slip-up.
No, it's like you're actively handing the system, or the other parties involved, perfectly valid legal reasons to deny your claim, hold up your money, or even penalize you.
So you really have to think of the documentation not as separate from the real work, the treatment, managing the injury, but is totally integral to it.
Absolutely, because without the right documentation, the value of all that work you did, it could potentially just vanish, be lost entirely in the system.
It's like the sources implied. Consider every form, every report, every confirmation slip as a vital step towards actually getting your paycheck.
Exactly. Because if that paperwork isn't right, you really could find yourself having worked for free.
A pretty sobering thought to end on. But hopefully it really drives home how critical getting this documentation right is. We hope this deep dive gave you, the listener, a much clearer picture of what's needed and why it matters so profoundly in California workers' comp.
Yeah, maybe take these points and look hard at your own processes. Are there gaps? Are you definitely keeping those EORs? Are your RFAs truly bulletproof?
It might even be worth digging into some of those specific labor code and CZR sections we mentioned, just to really understand the requirements that apply directly to your role in the system. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for listening to Workers Comp Unwrapped. If you found value in today's episode, share it with your fellow medical providers and healthcare specialists. For more information, contact us at lena.klein@medicallienmgt.com or visit our website, medicallienmgt.com.